everyone. Good evening. Yeah. Are you ready for our final two keynote speakers of the day? Yes. That's the spirit. Okay. So on a scale of 0 to 11, John, how extreme are you feeling right now?
10.9.
Pretty good. Prees, on a scale of 0 to 11, how extreme are you feeling right now?
Well, 16.
Wow.
Of course.
16?
Yeah.
Get out of town. Okay. So we're going to take a departure from conventional medicine for the next two sessions. I'm guessing you're all pretty cooked. You've had a full day of extreme medicine. So we're entering into the realm of adventure and exploration. And our next speaker is actually a discovery of my dad. He found a newspaper article in the Times by this explorer. Her name is Lucy Shepherd, and she is redefining what it is to be an explorer in the year 2022. So Lucy's Suffolk-based, she's 29 years old, and she has tons of experience. So she's been out in Denali, in Alaska. She was trapped in a tent in 90-mile-an-hour winds for 2 weeks. She's had a narrow escape in Tajikistan when she was airlifted off a mountain by a helicopter. She's crossed the High Sierra in California. And most notably, recently, she did a world-first trek through 250 miles of virgin rainforest in Guyana. So she's the real deal. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to say she's here with us this evening, Lucy Shepherd.
Hello. So yes, pushing boundaries. We're going to, like you said, departure from medical, academic. I'm afraid I can't qualify as that. But I'm going to tell you, focus mainly on the recent jungle expedition I did that actually, to this day, I completed. So this time, exactly last year, I came out of the Amazon rainforest. Before I begin, I'm going to show you a quick, it's very rough video. Not quite finished yet, but it should give you a taster of that expedition, and then we'll take it from there.
My name is Lucy Shepherd.
We just ran down that mountain. That was close.
I've always wanted to push the boundaries of modern exploration.
When you feel like you're in danger, you normally are. Heartbeat going with the snake.
Now, I'm taking on my biggest expedition yet.
This is the hardest thing I have ever done.
Journeying on foot across untouched, uncharted Amazon rainforest, the Kanuku Mountains.
This is becoming much bigger than we could have ever anticipated.
It's steep. It's very, very steep.
We'll be the first to explore this dangerous jungle. This is a place filled with myths and legends.
The face is a human, and the foot is a deer. Many people wouldn't believe if you go back and tell them, but they come to see it real. They would be afraid just like us as well.
This is uncharted terrain. We're charting the uncharted.
Deadly wildlife is around every corner.
I am pretty sure there is a jaguar near us. So we need to get out of here.
You can hear bushmasters over there, bushmasters, they are all around us.
It's very, very scary.
We'll have to dig deep in order to survive.
I'm so tired. Really tired.
It really sucks.
And source food where we can. Our mission? To share our story to create awareness of the need to protect these lost worlds still left on our planet.
I never dreamed of climbing up so high in the Kanuku, but now I can see I'm up in the sky.
It was never going to be easy.
It's probably the most nervous I've been of the whole trip.
Got stung by a wasp. A big one.
You can be a mile and you can go zing!
But where's the fun in that?
You know that, Lucy.
Will we find the strength to push through and discover what's really out there?
Whoa! Bush died in the jungle.
Oh my god. This looks horrendous.
This is Amazon Uncharted.
It's hard.
Yeah, there's a picture.
Oh, you definitely don't need to do that. So, there is often a common misconception that we are over the glory days of exploration and that we've discovered everything there is left to discover on planet Earth. Well, I'm here today to tell you otherwise. So my name is Lucy Shepherd, and I have the rather odd, and I'm very lucky to have the job title of being a professional explorer. Now, for the last, 12 years or so, I've been going to the Arctic, the mountains, and the jungles as well. But don't get me wrong, I didn't grow up thinking that being an explorer was a real job. It sounds pretty ridiculous, doesn't it? I didn't think that being an explorer you could still exist in a modern-day world. But I think it's about time that we redefined what an explorer actually is and what it means to be an explorer. Because let's be honest, when we think of an explorer, what do we think of? We think of 19th century, maybe Edwardian man with a big beard, woolly hat. Or then there's Indiana Jones, and I really hope, well, maybe sometimes on expedition, but I hope I don't look like either of those things. But if we actually look at what the definition of an explorer actually means, it really means a person who explores a new and unfamiliar area for the very first time. So I think technically doesn't that mean that we can all be explorers in our own right, so all of us in this room can be explorers, because you don't have to do it in the sort of traditional sense. You can do it, you can explore with your mind, with your work, with your career, with your sort of going somewhere for the very first time yourself, individually. You can do it with your art, your sport, anything. But of course, for the sake of this talk today and the pushing boundaries, extreme expedition side of things, I'm going to talk about it in the more traditional sense. Now, I know what you're thinking. In order to explore a new and unfamiliar place for the very first time, we probably should be jetting off of our planet up into space or diving deep underneath our oceans. And I'm not doing either of those things, sadly, yet, but maybe there's a few people I can talk to about that. But it comes surprising to a lot of people that there is still land, actually land, left on planet Earth that we don't think has ever had humans go onto it, and definitely hasn't had humans recordably go through it. Now, how do I know that? Because I've been there. So my most recent expedition to the Amazon took me to Guyana, sort of South Guyana, border of Brazil, a place called the Canuco Mountains. Now, this place, it's a place filled with myths and legends. It's a place filled to the brim with head-crushing jaguars and whistling bushmaster snakes, which I'll talk a little bit about in a little bit. It's a place that people actually told us not to go. We would be foolish to go. It was a very scary place. We would die if we went there. And it wasn't just me. It wasn't just me. It was myself and my fantastic team, all of them indigenous Amerindians. A lot of them were my friends beforehand, all of them friends by the end of it, of course. All of them with exceptional jungle skills, and all of them put their trust in me to lead them through this uncharted land. Now, by the end of this talk, I want to share the 3 ingredients that I think make up the explorer's mindset. And this is something that I think all of us in my team had in order to finish this expedition safely and successfully. And I hope these skills are transferable to whatever goal you might have in your own Pushing Boundaries mission. But before I go into that, I won't bore you too much with childhood. No one wants to hear that. But I don't know about you, but I used to love climbing trees. I used to be quite adventurous in that sense. Now, put your hand up if, when you were a kid, you used to climb trees regularly. Most of the room. Okay, now put your hand up if you still climb trees regularly. It's funny, isn't it? There's a lot of things like that we do so much when we were a kid. It might be dancing for no reason, it might be puzzles, it might be something that you used to really like doing. When we get older, we sort of lose this spark that made us feel so alive. And this happened to me because I don't know what it is. It's society, education, peer pressure, caring what people think. It fizzles out. And I recognized that this was happening to my adventurous side of me. So I started looking, when I was a teenager, I started looking for ways, how can I spark that again? I got lucky, I saw an advert in the paper asking for 18 to 25-year-olds to take part in a scientific Arctic expedition to Svalbard. It wasn't just as easy as put your name on the list and go. You had to sort of go through interviews, training, you had to learn how to fundraise, which, of course, I'm sure anyone who's doing expeditions now, it's one of the hardest. It gets easier, things to do. But I got in. So when I was 18 years old, off I went to Svalbard up in the Arctic for 10 weeks. And myself and 9 other people were cut off from civilization. It was everything I could have hoped for and more. It really was incredible. Found this version of myself that I really liked. And then now, actually, I sort of 10 years later, sort of started guiding expeditions. This was the most recent one back in May. We had quite a close encounter with a polar bear, but I don't have time to explain that, but I can say that later. But Svalbard, funny thing happens when you go on, especially your first adventure, especially at this sort of age, whether it's just before university, just after university. You go on it, you have an incredible time, and something happens when you get back. And it's often your loved ones, they go, wow, what an amazing once-in-a-lifetime adventure. And I just thought, if that was once in a lifetime, then surely it's all downhill from here. I peaked too soon, and for a while it was quite hard. It was quite hard to think, well, what this void in my sort of heart and my soul was missing. But after sort of realizing, actually, if you really want this, if you want to make it a career, then you're just going to have to figure it out. There's no guidebook. You're just going to have to navigate your own path. So I started honing my skills and trying to get grants where I could, go on more expeditions, sort of fast forward a few years, and I was sort of doing high mountains, more Arctic, and then 2014 was my first expedition to a jungle. And this is where the Amazon Uncharted story begins. This is Harold and Lionel, much happier than they look to be with me than that photo. So 2014, I was just joining them for a month, going on a hunting trip. We were sort of catching fish with bows and arrows and hunting little things, smoking it on the fire, and then essentially bringing it back to their families to fill their larders. And it was a kind of interesting expedition because on the first night, I was essentially, or I thought I was being stalked by a jaguar. What had actually happened, there was an armadillo that was being stalked by a jaguar. Harold and Lionel, lovely men, but the first night they'd just seen this lonesome female. They decided to respect my privacy, put their hammocks like miles away. And I had this armadillo underneath my hammock with the jaguar circling me for hours, and later on we found the armadillo carcass meters away. And that kind of stained my jungle experience, and I was sort of thought, I'll stick with cold places, stick with high places, and then I realized, well, maybe I'm being a little bit of a hypocrite. I'm coming to do talks like this, I'm telling people to face their fears and get out of their comfort zone, and then here I am not going back to the jungle. So I thought I've got to go back to the jungle. Kanuku Mountains, my first introduction to these mountains, very little known about them, was in 2020. I was lucky enough to go away just before the pandemic hit. These Kanuku Mountains, there's not much online about them, there's not much written about them. The only maps that are available are 50 years old, and even them, they were taken by a Canadian with a camera. Canadian pilot. He flew over, he took some pictures, and then he drew what he could see. So they were very, very unreliable. But the idea for this, we didn't have too much time or sponsorship money. It was go from south to north across these. This is the team. There was actually only meant to be one guy with me, on the guy on the right, Aaron. But what happened actually was the last point of civilization. I was packing up my bag, and there's a knock at the door. And I think, I'm not expecting anyone. And I think, I go and answer it. And then there's 2 very angry-looking Amerindian men, Eggy and Guy, who are the 2, one crouched down and one next to me. And they go, "Are you Lucy Shepherd?" And I say, "Yes." And they say, "We've heard you've come to cross the Kanuku Mountains." And I say, "Yeah, I have." I say, "Well, what gives you the right to cross these mountains we've lived in the shadows of our whole lives?" And sort of it hits me as maybe it was naive to think that, well, of course there's going to be other people that wants to come with me. The explorer gene is in so many of us across the world. And they were angry that I was doing it. And I thought, yeah, you're absolutely right to be angry. So I take them over, we sit down, buy them a Coke, we chatted for hours. They'd actually made the really, really long journey from their village, which was really miles away up in the savannah. They'd managed to get a little motorbike and gone off-road just to find me. And I say, "Well, you seem like good guys. How about if you can come with me on one condition? On one condition, you go back to your wives, you pack your bag, you go to tell your families that this adventure that you've been dreaming of your whole life, you've got to leave tomorrow." And they say, "Yeah, okay, Lucy, on one condition for you." I go, "Yes, what is it?" They say, "Can we take our mates as well?" And so that's how we ended up with so many. But the expedition was a success. We had some close calls. It was clear that there was so much left to explore in this area. By this point, I had been doing expeditions semi-professionally sort of for 10 years, and I thought, right, it's time to do something big. My good friend of mine came up with an idea that maybe I should cross these mountains from east to west all the way, the whole width. My first thought was, is this even possible? And then, of course, that was the reason to do it. And there's so little known about this area, especially the eastern side. Go all the way from there. I'll skip this bit very quickly. We had to have 2 resupplies. The only points where we could have resupplies were the 2 points in the river. These were also really important for medevac options because I'll go into it a little bit, but the country didn't have a helicopter with a winch. So you'd have to sort of identify places where helicopters could land. It was all very complicated. If you had an emergency near a resupply point, that meant that at least someone could come to you in about 3 days by boat. So these resupplies, my friend, put some barrels at coordinates, and then we got the coordinates, and we would go and have no human contact during it. The reason we were doing it was to highlight the awareness that we need to protect this whole area. Half of it's protected, half of it's not, so that's threatened by illegal mining and logging, and it's affecting indigenous communities downstream. So no one actually lives in this area, but they all live around that sort of red circle. Now, the expedition didn't get off to the best of starts. It was actually almost over before it even began. In order to get to the insertion point, we had to get these two long, thin aluminium boats upstream, up the Essequibo River. And these aren't meant to capsize. But when you see rapids ahead of you, you get the boat to the side and you portage it. We see some rapids, and they don't look too big. And we think, we'll go head on. And then the engine, the measly engine, it was really small, it sort of cuts out. And it cuts out, and we managed to get it going. And at this point, we realized that these rapids are actually pretty big. And as we all know, water is one of the biggest dangers on any expedition. And we realized we have to just keep going. And I'm in the front boat. The boat goes up into the air, tries to clear the rapid, but only the front bit of the boat clears it. The engine is trying really hard to go upstream, but it can't do it. We're edging backwards. On one side, we've got like this rock with a whirlpool. On the other side, we've got the water sort of tumbling. You really feel the strength of water when you're in rapids. And we realize that this is not looking good. We try and use the oars to get free. Luckily, some sort of miracle, we flip the right side. If we'd flipped next to the rock, we would have been pinned, and it would have been game over, I think. We try and grab hold of each other, but water is so powerful, we can't grab. We're just trying to sort of get our heads above water as much as we can and try and get buoyancy. And after what felt like eternity, we sort of popped out the other side. The other boat came to rescue us and pick us up, put us on the rock, while they went and got all our gear and belongings. And with expeditions like this, if you just lose one bag, we all know we try and pack as light as we can, then it would have really been the end of the expedition. It would have been too dangerous to continue, but somehow we managed to find it. And apart from being a bit shaken up, it was pretty good for myself and the team to be reminded that rescue isn't coming. We were playing with fire here. It was a very, very remote expedition, and we're very much at the mercy of the jungle. So maybe it was a good thing. We're dropped off. We wave goodbye to the boat. And suddenly it hits me. It's quite an overwhelming feeling. I'm standing there with on one side I've got my team, these 4 men, all with our huge rucksacks on, all looking at me, and it's sort of, I'm the leader here, I'm the navigator, and this responsibility just sinks in. It hits me. I need to get them back safe. And on the other side, you've got this wall of forest, and you just don't know what's in it. And how many of you have been to the jungles before? Quite a few of you. So the jungle here is quite interesting. Jungle, when you go on the rivers, it's very colorful. It's very full of life. It's a very nice place. It's just really nice to be there. When you go anywhere into the thick interior, into the bush, it is dark. It's dark and dark greens, dark browns, and it's a very hard place to live. But that's why we're there. And then my team, of course, I need them to sort of watch out for the dangers that I just wouldn't know of, but they also need me for the sort of leadership decisions and navigation. Now, progress was slow. So, of course, we had these maps, these 50-year-old maps, but they weren't very good, and we really didn't know how long this was going to take. And it was much slower than we thought. I hesitate to call this a hike or a trek. It was anything but. It was sort of crawling, climbing, wading through rivers. And sometimes we were only doing sort of 2 kilometers a day. And that was a good day. And what I was doing on those first few weeks is I was laying in my hammock, pitch black. You can't even see your hand in front of you. And I was trying to think, okay, well, maybe when will we get to the resupply point? At what point do you think we'll run out of food and really have to try and hunt? Will I even be home for Christmas? All of these things. And it was becoming quite scary to try and calculate that. And that brings me to the first point I want to talk about, is embracing the unknown. Now, you don't have to go to the jungles, you don't have to go to the Arctic in order to face unpredictability or uncertainty. We've seen that more than ever in the last few years. But unless you have the tools to be able to handle it, then it can really knock you off your feet. And so you really have to get good at embracing the unknown. And there's a few things to remember, I think, which helps you to do this. That's these things just here. Now, embracing the unknown, you can either let it catch you up, or you can grab it by the horns and just go for it. I think the big thing about this, embracing the unknown and embracing things that you can't control, is think about how it's actually exciting. How boring would life be? How mundane would life be if we knew exactly what was going to happen? So see it as exciting, go for the challenge, and you can create this sort of inner peace with it. That's what happened to me when I realized that I couldn't control it. There's this, okay, well, let's just enjoy that aspect of it, and every day wake up and let's see what the day brings. Now, we know the jungle is a very wet place. It's a very wet place normally, but it's even more here because we went sort of at one point 3 weeks without seeing sunlight, which meant that nothing could dry. The most pointless thing you can ever bring on an interior long-distance jungle expedition is a towel. It is just dead weight in your bag, so never do that. But underneath our wet clothes, inside our wet boots, our skin was rotting. The guys had the onset of trench foot. I had an infection on my thigh that just grew. And we were able to manage it and control it, but it did really mean that we had to harness this next ingredient, resilience. Now, this has become a little bit of a buzzword, but I think for good reason. Now, resilience, the thing to remember is that every one of us in this room are born with it. We wouldn't be here if we weren't. But the trick is to sort of constantly build it. So how do you constantly build it? Well, on adventures and things like that, it's quite easy to, because every day something's thrown at you. You have to get back up. It's all about how quickly you can get back up after being knocked down. But in day-to-day life, it's about actively sort of putting yourself in uncomfortable situations so that you can become more resilient. And I think think little things like taking the stairs rather than lift, or making that conscious decision to go for that run in the cold and wet that you really don't fancy. And that will, in turn, make you more resilient. And also, it's not about just being hardy all the time. It's about how you deal with things emotionally and mentally as well. So once we were sort of embracing the unknown and becoming more resilient, it meant that we could handle things like this. This is a bushmaster snake. Unfortunately, in this one, we actually had to kill it with a bow and arrow because it was being very aggressive. One of our team almost fell on it, and it was guarding his tools, his machete and bow and arrow. I can tell you there's not a population problem here in this area. We were the first people to record these snakes whistling. No one believed us that these snakes whistle, and we're working with the Natural History Museum now to sort of say that absolutely they do. They whistle everywhere. There's a 2-tone whistle. It's very menacing. These snakes, they'll kill you if they bite you. They can grow up to 12 feet. They will be on the forest floor. You can hardly see them. And they are pretty aggressive, especially here. And they also travel in pairs, and they have been known to sleep underneath hammocks to get your warmth and strike when you least expect it. So, yeah, my team, rightly so, were very, very scared of these things, and we had some pretty close calls with this. I will jet through this very quickly, but we reached our first resupply point, and there was a big river. And there had been a lot of rainfall this year, and that meant there was a lot of black caiman in the river. Now, black caiman When you swim across, if you splash, they can come and get you. And you could literally see these caiman everywhere. So what we had to do is we had to build a raft. So something out of sort of Scout magazine or whatever it is, bamboo raft. And I kid you not, it was the last piece of bamboo. Vivian here, who was sort of my main man, Vivian, he cut it. And I don't know if you know about bamboo, but they have these lethal spikes. And it fell into his arm. Tiny, tiny prick. You could hardly see it. It shot through, but he couldn't close his right hand, which we need the hand, and there was sort of this risk of infection. I had a nomad risk on the other end of the sat phone. Luckily, it happened here because we had a clear view of the sky. Sat phones do not work very well under the canopy, but we were able to sort of get advice from this doctor, and he said, it could lead to a very bad situation if he carried on. So we were able to get a boat to take him out, which was a real blow to lose him. Now, I'm told that you can also spell Medivac like this. I'm not quite sure if E or I. I will dash through this very quickly, but these are the things I like to consider on big expeditions. Does the country have a helicopter, etc.? Have you made touch with an in-country doctor that might be able to join the helicopter if it does come? No point having someone come rescue you if they can't help you sort of with anti-venom. Does the country even have anti-venom? It didn't have it here, so it would have to go to Brazil first, and all of these sorts of things. And most importantly, does all your team acknowledge the risks, and does every one of you know when to call it if something happens? This is the raft that we built. This was a high point. It was nice to get our feet into the sun and dry them a little bit. Now, optimism. This is my final ingredient that is very, very important. Optimism. It's not actually about being happy all the time. Optimism is actually about believing and persevering until you can find a solution to the problem. You will continue until you find a solution. And on adventures and on the expeditions, on the things that you're sort of aiming for in whatever your goals are, sometimes there is just no choice, so you have to do it. And there's also, I put here the power of positive self-talk. Now, I get asked a lot, well, Lucy, was there any point that you thought you just couldn't do this? And in all honesty, no. I did not let myself think I can't do it, because as soon as you start doing that with your sort of inner psyche, it's a slippery slope. It's going to lead to some questionable moments. There will be time to reflect on this sort of stuff in a sort of more safe, comfortable environment, but when you really need to stay strong, then is not the time. And of course, being optimistic and being sort of fun and facing adversity with a smile builds a good team atmosphere. Now, as we continued, wildlife started to get pretty epic. Does anyone know, put your hand up if you know what a peccary is? A few of you. So peccary, white-lipped peccary in this case, peccary are like wild boar. And this area, again, since there's something about this area, very aggressive. These things travel in up to packs of 500, and even the bushmaster snakes are scared of these things. And you hear them coming. You hear them coming because they grind their teeth, and their young sort of yell. And if you hear them, you have to dump your bag near a tree and climb the tree, because they will tear down anything in their path, and they can rip you. If you get in the way, they'll just rip you apart very, very slowly. So we were frequently climbing trees, which was, we got quite used to it. Another funny, creepy, crawly, I'm sure everyone knows what a botfly is. This isn't a botfly. This is a mosquito worm. Now, we know how important being admin is in the jungle. You have to wash yourself with every opportunity. For us, we weren't passing clean water sources very often at all. So you literally just find a muddy puddle, and you have to use your anti-bac soap and really scrub. Mikey here, he wasn't washing that much. And he got one of these mosquito worms in his skin. He obviously just went past a leaf, got these spores in him. They crawl into the pores or whatever it is, and they grow inside you. This had been in there for about 3 weeks. It comes up for air. We managed to suffocate it, but if it had been in there another week or two, it would have started to grow hair, got bigger, get wings, and then fly out, and it would have been very painful. Now ignore the tarantula, but this wasp. Now wasps and bees, obviously very dangerous from a medical point of view with shock and things, and being allergic to it. You really have to know your wasps. You have to know them because there's one type of wasp that if it swarms you, which they do, you have to freeze. You have to freeze and be really still. The other kind of wasp that looks exactly the same, you have to leg it. So you really have to know what wasp is what. And then on this occasion, this is a huge wasp. This is a tarantula hawk wasp. And this thing, you'll see them on the forest floor dragging tarantulas. They eat them from the inside out. And they're pretty docile to humans. They're not meant to hurt you, but they do have they're on the second most painful sting, apart from the bullet ant on the Schmidt scale. I have been stung by a bullet ant as well, so I can sort of say that this is correct. But we were having a bad day. It was one of those days where you did have to be optimistic. These docile wasps did actually, it got me right on the eye there, which was made seeing a little bit harder in a very, very dark environment. But after 50 days, 253 miles, 400 kilometers, using 50-year-old maps, we finally emerged from the deep, dark, and damp jungle into the heat of the savannah at the border of Brazil. And I tell you what, it was this huge sense of relief. I didn't have to be constantly responsible for other people's life. That was a huge relief. But there was also a hesitation from myself and all of the team. You build these rhythms, you build these routines when you're on these adventures. You have your own little bubble, don't you? And when that's burst, you become quite worried about the modern, complex world in which we live in. I know I focused on this talk a lot about the sort of horrors and the wildlife, and it sounds, put you off from ever going back to the jungle again. That, of course, is to make a good story. But above all, this expedition, of course, had a lot of joy in it. And this joy came from two reasons. The first are my team, these guys. I mean, it's a sort of funny team from the outset, but we got on so well. And when you face these things with people, you have these raw relationships, and you build something special. So that's the first thing. The other thing is fulfillment. When you're pushing boundaries, you are feeling fulfilled, aren't you? You're feeling content, and you're feeling like you've achieved something every single day, and that in turn brings a lot of joy. And you can really see it in our eyes here. Well, we have done it.
Yeah!
Woohoo!
What's the guys like to hear you? We have done it!
Yeah! So I said at the start that every one of us can be explorers in our own right, and I really do mean that. I unapologetically call myself an explorer and my team an explorers, but every one of you who are in this room will be at this conference for a reason. You'll all have goals. You'll all have goals that you need to achieve. And I hope those goals are big and they are pushing the limits and pushing the boundaries. And with any big goal, what can I say is you really have to put all your energy into it. You have to put all your energy into it. You have to be obsessed. You have to be completely all consumed by it. You have to make sacrifices, but they don't feel like sacrifices because you want to do it. And I think if you can take on that explorer's mindset, and use these three ingredients, embracing the unknown, sort of be excited about the uncertainty, building resilience, so constantly actively putting yourself in uncomfortable situations in order to get back up quicker the next time, and practicing optimism, not about being happy all the time, but it's about persevering until you find a solution. If you can distill that framework and use that, then hopefully that will help you get one step closer to where you need to be. I'm just going to finish with a 20-second video of the team just introducing themselves, and then I think we can take a few questions.
My name is Michael McDonald.
Well, my name is Maximus Griffith.
My name is Vivian Smith.
My name is Iran Bernardin. I'm the age of 52 years. I walked from Essequibo to meet here to the point in Savannah. I'm so proud.
I'm very proud and very joyful.
I completed the adventure from Essequibo to the Kanako mountain range.
I have completed this expedition very successful.
Thank you very much.
Lucy, thank you.
Thank you.
That last segment there really speaks to that strong bond that you formed with your forest family.
Yeah.
What an amazing team.
No, they are. They're great guys.
And I think that's a key difference between the expedition that you went on and the golden age of exploration that you allude to, was that the local people in the past were very much exploited, weren't they? They were just the pack horses, they were Sherpas, and now you're kind of forging this new path where they're your friends, they're your partners in this whole endeavor, and that's really remarkable, isn't it?
It's their expedition, yeah.
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 Okay, so whether you're watching at home or whether you're here in the audience, we want to hear your thoughts or your questions. So we'll start with those of you in the room, but if you're watching at home, please post your Q&A in the Swap Card app, go to live discussion and send your thoughts there. Pop your hands up if you've got a comment, question, or anything for Lucy. Okay, let's start with Peru down here.
What happens to the team at the end of the expedition? Do they have to track back west to east?
I wouldn't do that to them, no. We finished at, it's called a bushmouth, where the jungle sort of opens up and there is a sort of off-track road that a 4x4 can come and get us. So yeah, no, we had a party that night. We went to civilization and had a few days of sort of transition period, and then they went off back to their families. Yeah.
Great question. Let's take one from a gentleman in the middle here, please.
Yeah, fun talk. Thank you. Curious what you, as we're at a medical conference, curious what you had in regards to a med kit with you, and if you plan to resupply anything in that, and/or you had to because you used some items in it.
Yeah, good question. Yeah, no, we had, so I did some sort of expedition medicine courses. I try and do those frequently. It's kind of a tricky one. You take as much as you can, but you also have to make sacrifices in the med kit. Yeah, I took a pretty big one, focusing a lot on cuts and things like that. Yeah, we're dealing with machetes. That's one of the biggest things, that dangers. We had some close calls of machetes and people who were tired of machetes flying in the air. So I took a lot of that sort of thing. Foot powder, all that stuff, so important. Had to get more of that. Had to get more of ibuprofen, pills, things like that. Yeah, you take as much as you can, but you definitely, I would love to take more.
Yes, so wouldn't we all? Absolutely.
Improvise.
And clearly, weight was very important in a 250-mile trek like that over 50 days. Every gram counts.
And filming it as well. So
yeah,
it was heavy.
Well, Susanna online wants to know, what was the single most important item in your medical bag? If you could take everything out and have one thing left, what would it have been?
Oh, good question. Probably the sort of antifungal foot powder. Yeah, I would say first thing. It's
pretty damp in the jungle, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, that makes sense. Another question from online, from Elsa Chen-Yao. Now, you talked about how you discovered that bush master snakes whistle. I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah.
Were there any other kinds of discoveries or new information that you collected about the region? And crucially, were you able to update this 50-year-old map?
Unfortunately, I couldn't update them because to map an area, it takes a lot more. We're a small team.
We're not cartographers.
No,
that's fine.
But do other discoveries we did. There's sort of the behaviours of animals again, acting very, very unusually because of just how remote, and they weren't used to people. So the big cats, we had some interesting times with pumas. They're usually they stick away, but they certainly weren't here. And other Amerindian legends that you think are just legends, but actually you get into this area and they feel very, very real.
Any other questions from the audience? Yes, down here, please.
Thank you for the presentation. Thank you very much for your presentation. I just want to pick your brain. Why do you think the indigenous people who have such great skills, why didn't they ever want to, cross this area? What do you think it is?
Yeah, so the first expedition, they didn't cross it simply because of logistics. The first one was much shorter one. They could have done that in a few weeks, but once they got to the other side, it would have been challenging for them to get back. This one, it's a very feared area. It's a very scared area. No one knows, no one wants to go in there. There's a reason people sort of historically didn't sort of trek through the jungles. They would always go by rivers. Much better, more efficient way of doing it. So yeah, there's a lot of stories that have been passed down generation to generation that is sort of puts people off from even attempting to.
Are there any mythical monsters or spirits that
basically like that. Yeah, things like that, and the sort of wildlife that will come and get you. Yeah, guardians of the forest.
Okay, let's take a question from the back, please.
Hi, I was just wondering, were there any examples of traditional indigenous medicine or knowledge that you had to take advantage of, given that you were in such a remote environment and you had companions that may have that knowledge?
Yeah, I mean, luckily we didn't have to use any, but hundreds of things. This is the thing with indigenous cultures all around in different areas. You can be in the same country in different areas of different tribes. They were full with knowledge. You'd pass bark on the tree and they'd tell you why that would be good, and sort of note it down, and you'd have to gather things just in case something happened. Even things that you would use on these Bushmaster bites. It wouldn't necessarily save you, but they say sort of it would buy you time. So yeah, there's so many things to learn from them. So you kind of scribble everything down that you hear.
Great question. Great. And one more from the back, please.
Thanks, it was a brilliant talk. Where next?
Where next? I'm actually kind of going all over the place in the next few weeks and months and next year, so it's getting busy. Unfortunately, I can't say too much, but it's all kinds of terrains, so deserts, more jungles, cold places, so my packing is getting quite complicated.
I can imagine. I've got one last question for you, Lucy. You described yourself as a shy child. What happened?
Shy child, I know. No, I never thought I was shy. I was just told I was shy, and I thought that's just because I didn't have anything I wanted to talk to those people about. But find your passion, and you can talk all day.
That's a great note to end on. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, Lucy Shepherd.